Hello, and welcome back to the Balancing Act podcast with Singer Lewack, where we teach you about innovative solutions to help balance your business. We're excited to have you back. In today's episode, we'll be discussing success with ERP with a twist. ERP success as seen from the other side, what the vendors would love for you to know before you start a project with your company. Today, we are joined by SL Business Informatics partner, Bob Green.
Hello, my name is Bob Green. I'm the lead partner for Singer Lewack's Business Informatics division, and I'm very happy to be bringing you another one of our series of digital transformation-oriented podcasts. Today, I'm very excited because I have with me two very, very important people in my professional career, and both are very good friends, Jennifer Harris and David Cieslak. The two of them both run and have been very active for a number of decades now in the leadership and delivery of exceptional client service around ERP and other sorts of technology, including CRM and other subscription software. They've led teams big and small. They've worked on clients large and small, multiple industries. And without question, they're trustworthy, high in integrity, and overall really focused on making sure the client comes first in all respects. What we want to do today is have an opportunity to talk a little bit about what things are like from their perspective, from their teams, and how companies working with them might be more successful in the long run if they would think about a few things with them in advance to really collaborate better. Jen, I'm going to ask you to give yourself a bio first, and then Dave, I'll ask you to do the same. So Jennifer, if you don't mind, this is Jennifer Harris.
Thank you, Bob, for that kind introduction. As Bob said, I've been in the space for over almost 30 years, and I run a company, Technology Management Concepts, TMC. We originally started out as, basically a ERP vendor of all products and settled on the Microsoft product line within early 2000s. In the last few years, our organization has really morphed as the industry has morphed to settle on cloud-based business solutions from Microsoft. I think the industry is changing, and our organization, along with it, to do ERP, along with CRM, business apps, Power Apps, and Azure. Myself and our company, I'm most proud of that. Our culture has been able to keep up with the times. And as things are so volatile out there, I think running an organization that has a great culture and has the client come first is something that we do well, but also making sure we have the right client and the right people on the bus. So I feel that in the last 2 or 3 years, we've sort of reinvented ourselves, and that's what's happening out there in the industry as well.
Thanks, Jennifer. I'll endorse this too, in that I've seen Jennifer really try and take her company to another level. And David, of course, you have as well. You've had different paths in that process. But seeing organizations that are always focused on continual improvement is really such a refreshing thing, particularly in this industry. And the two of you have been phenomenal at that. And Jennifer, I know I've seen your journey most recently become so successful for you. So thank you. David, you're on.
All right. Thank you, Bob. I appreciate the opportunity to participate. So my background, CPA, got my start at Pricewaterhouse. In fact, that's where Bob Green and I met. So many years ago, been doing this for over 30 years now. Was a principal and co-founder in a company called Arxis Technology, and pretty much exclusively focused on the Sage product portfolio, although have worked with the Microsoft lineup and really many of the ERP's solutions in the space over time. We sold our company and became a part of RKL Solutions in 2018. And my role within the company as I joined them as Chief Cloud Officer. So, similar to what Jen just shared, really kind of focused on helping our clients transition from legacy on-prem solutions to cloud-based alternatives. That really is not just a good way to go. It's really the only way to go right now in terms of kind of company critical infrastructure and applications. And so kind of thinking through digital transformation, thinking through the finance and accounting functions and all the supporting applications, that's really the focus of myself and our team throughout throughout the day.
Well, thank you, David. And I know you haven't said this, but David speaks quite often to the finance profession. And I know I've seen him plenty of times in a trench coat, which is part of the way he likes to present his Inspector Gadget at the ICPA event. So, David,
I have a lot of fun doing that too. Yep.
Yeah, you stay on top.
I haven't seen that.
You're both such great. Yeah, Jennifer, you haven't seen that. I'm sure it's on video somewhere, but Dave's not too embarrassed by it. Anyway, to go a little further, thank you. We're going to kick into content, and I thank our listeners for listening to the bios for all three of us. I want to share that the purpose of the podcasts that we're doing are to educate our clients and colleagues really here at SLBI about some of the more vital strategic elements that are needed to achieve success with digital transformation. That includes things like going through projects around ERP migrations and upgrades, CRM migrations and upgrades, as well as other complex projects around IT, which I know, Jennifer, your firm does quite a bit of that as well around moving into the data cloud and things like that. So we're talking to people that we're fortunate to get them in the same room together, and they're just the nicest people. So here goes. We're going to get started. Today, we're going to talk to Jennifer and David to share some insider tips on what they would like the buyers of their types of services and products to hear in order to help achieve things mutually that are going to benefit their organizations and particularly the clients. But of course, you want to be working, if you're the client, with a very happy provider as well. It's one of the things we do because our group is independent. We rely on people like David and Jennifer's teams to take care of our clients in these areas once we determine the need is appropriate. So these create long-term relationships, and I can speak to the two of them that they have a very long-standing client list each. It's very impressive. So I'm going to start with how to achieve success in the sales cycle. We're going to kind of start at the beginning of the cycle and work our way all the way through. So the beginning is the sales cycle, and the ending, we're going to get into more implementations and how things go well there. So from the time the customer really focuses on what they're looking for and contacting somebody like David and Jennifer, the first question is going to be around that. And we're going to start with you, David. We know your sales leader, Mark Severance, very well. What would you and Mark want people to know about the sales process and how they can make it effective for the prospect and for your team? Maybe we can start with what happens in that first intro meeting, but really what's really good for the prospect to bring to it, and what sort of preparation should they do? And feel free to elaborate on any of that process.
Well, certainly. And I would say, I think for every organization, from the outset, this can probably feel like a daunting task. It's significant. You've probably been working on, the application that's in place for not just years, but in some cases, more than a decade is what we've observed. And so there's concern, there's trepidation. We don't change ERP solutions every day. But you're going to want to make certain that you work with reselling, organizations that have done that a lot. And so they're really, they understand what change looks like, and they're able to do that successfully. And so when we think about just the outset of the really kind of the communications, the kind of we call it the discovery process, really where we're trying to, understand more about what a migration or a system conversion might look like, and at the same time learn more about the reseller. It's important that they've got a structured approach, and I know for our part, we do just that. We've got something that we call the customer journey. It's a document we often share with the prospect right up front, and it addresses a lot of those really just straight off the block kind of concerns, and what does this overall process, this journey look like from initial point of contact all the way up to successful up and running with the new system. So, and we take a very structured approach, to this, really every step along the way. And so, on that first discovery call, it's something, we've got, maybe questionnaires that we're going to want to step through with the prospect. But some of the important questions we're going to ask, are around what's your current situation? What are some of the biggest challenges that you're currently encountering? What's the impact of those challenges on the business? And in your mind, what does the ideal solution look like? Because really no one has a better seat in the theater than the client. And so they've got, a real clarity on that. And so I would say, really kind of some of the most important thing, have the right people on the call that are going to be able to address those areas. And provided the reseller, has a good structured process in place, they're going to be able to walk you through really a good interview. They're going to document that and hopefully share that back in a document that we call a summary of findings.
Mm-hmm. That's really helpful, Dave. Thank you. I think, part of the challenge I would imagine is, you guys have to really try and, politely explain to the client that, look, if you don't bring your best to these meetings, we can't be your best for you, right?
Absolutely correct.
Yeah, it's a challenge we always face. I mean, and I see that. And Jennifer, do you want to follow up on any of that? I know you've been through these a few times too.
I think, number one, have an internal team, have a point person, an internal project manager, know sort of what success looks like. And if possible, if you don't have some of your processes documented, to David's point, we'll do it with you. But even in that method, who we interview, having people on board and already know some of the budget and timeline. Clients they feel like they don't know what they don't know. But if sharing with your partner or your vendor budget and timeline does not mean anymore that they're just going to go over budget. It means they'll have a better idea of where you're going, what you're thinking. Those approvals and timelines are very important to have up front. If you can get that out of the way, and if you can have somebody internally that's already working or is assigned to work with us on this process, it's less of a sales process anymore. It's more of a current state versus a future state. And if you don't have somebody internally to do it, I'll give you a little plug here, Bob. Bob's firm is wonderful. And they will come in and do it. And this is, we say it a lot, but it saves you so much on the back end. And it really do it right the first time. And you can't do that if you don't have the appropriate planning.
That's almost our Foresight plan and Foresight process in a nutshell. I will say though, Jennifer, thank you for the comment. I've seen Brett Hensley from your team, right, in action, and I've talked to him most recently about some of the processes he goes through internally. And David, you mentioned how Mark goes through things with the questionnaires and the surveys in advance and things. This is what it takes to succeed, right? I feel like to the extent that I've seen right now, sometimes publishers come in directly and bring their sales teams, and they'll ask a lot of questions, but it's not as structured, and they may not have the right people in the room, right? So I feel like I know you guys well enough to say you need the right people. You're both saying that you need the right people in the room, and you need to be thinking about how to put it together. Before we go on to the next question, anything else to add?
I mean, we're structured as well, Jennifer? With it. Yeah, we're structured as well, and I think that came out of years of doing it in a more casual manner where the expectations weren't always in line, and you just, you have 90 minutes to learn all about them. And so I think, we've all come to the conclusion, or the successful people that do successful implementations, that doing it in a structured approach, making sure you have the right people in the room, the right questions. And if you don't, you just can't move forward. And I think that's also big, being able to say, we need to stop and you need to gather this information and get the right people to be working on this project.
Absolutely. So let's move into we're kind of going through the cycle now. What happens next typically is the product demonstrations. And again, I've seen both of your teams do these very, very well and frankly, methodically. It takes a ton of energy to deliver these. We all know that. And a lot of patience. So how can you suggest to the prospective customers, the clients that are potential future clients, similar to people on the podcast listening front, how to prepare themselves best for a demonstration that you can see kind of knocking it out of the park? And, it takes two to tango. So Jennifer, maybe you could share some ideas for prospective clients, what you'd love to see from them as these things get planned and delivered.
So people get demo fatigue. If you have too many demos and they're too long, right? And so I would say really make sure that the vendor or the reseller partner has a detailed agenda of what they're going to be showing, and that you really only have them show what's most important to your team, and make sure the right people are there to see it. So if you have a large, complex organization, you'll probably want to split it up into multiple sessions, so that the right people can be interested in the right thing. And be careful about having everybody in the room, because if somebody derails the demo and they're not interested, it's not their area that they really need to be a subject matter expert on, it can get derailed. So you want to keep it structured, make sure you have a strict agenda. And if you're doing a demo for the finance team, it should be for the finance team. If you're doing it for the warehouse, it should be for the warehouse.
Amen.
And right. And I think that, again, be very aware. If you have 5 vendors coming in and 2 are showing the same product and you're trying to do some scorecard, people get fatigued and they forget. So narrow it down. Also, the discovery process that David and I were talking about allows us to really get a bunch of these areas out of the way. So we're really just showing the things that are unique for your organization.
That's really good. Honing in on what matters most, because these demos can't last for days, and or they shouldn't theoretically, right? Even the ones we organize. David, anything you'd like to add to that? And I know you're very active, like personally, kind of scripting some of these demos for your team. So maybe you could share what that's like as well, and how the customer could help you help themselves.
Absolutely. I think Jennifer did a real nice job framing that up. I mean, it is all about focusing, on those key process flows. Those really, because at the end of the day, it's not, typically, core, accounting functionality, GLAPAR. A lot of it's going to come down to maybe the revenue cycle of what's going on in the warehouse. If you're in the not-for-profit space, grant accounting, so think about those things that are really, key drivers for the organization. Those process flows that, candidly are the areas that we're most want to address and, resolve, and make certain that, enough information has been provided to the vendor so they can essentially build out proof cases around those process flows. So sample documents, representative sample documents, contracts, invoices, purchase orders, items, so take those things that really are going to help the vendor construct, a proof case, and then hold them to that, show me what a day in the life is going to look like. Show me how we're going to take some of the things that either we do today or some of the things we can't do today, but we're trying to solve for. How are we going to be able to address that in the new solution? So to the extent you're providing that information, to the vendor, then, that sets them up for success in terms of being able to then turn around, come back, and demonstrate using your information. Whatever you do, don't sit through a generic demo. All that information is available online, on click-through demos or click-through videos. All that stuff's already pre-recorded. If you're going to take the time, spend the time, on a demo, make certain it's tailored to your specific requirements.
Yeah, I'd say it's probably fair, and this is my perception, not being on your side of the fence. I mean, frankly, the audience should understand we're usually on opposite sides of the fence, right? When this first starts, not adversarially, but just in playing the roles we play. It seems like you want the right people in the room. You want to make sure they're there. You want to make sure they know what they're going to see, and that they're not abusing your people either, right? In other words, you guys only have so many resources. I would think it's important to respect that the vendor. Then people sometimes think of you as a vendor before they know of you as a partner. They need to respect that you guys don't have all the time in the world, and that they can't continue to go back and forth. But I see that happen, by people's choices all the time, because they think they can. It's hard to combat that, right?
Yeah, and hopefully some of that, is you vet that out as a part of, some of the discovery process. I mean, prior to COVID, we were getting on airplanes and meeting with all of our prospects face to face. And if there were situations where, they didn't have the right people in the room, or, you found yourself taking a decided, right or left-hand turn right in the middle of a demonstration. It's like, well, we thought we were here to present X, but now you're asking a completely different set of questions. Is there a reason why this wasn't shared initially? So it really is about, understanding what the process looks like. And, the vendor very much wants to show the solution, in those areas of the solution that are going to address key requirements. So it really is a partnership right from the outset between the prospect and the vendor to say, this is what is essential for me and our team to see. And so we'll provide you with all of the samples of, that they're used to working with, but it's essential that that's what you're going to be able to demonstrate to them.
Thank you. Agree. Jennifer, anything to add to that?
Yeah, I think I would just say, as a vendor, we do want them to feel comfortable and feel like they saw the software because they're going to be using it. I think the main thing is the stakeholders need to be very clear on what's important and what they want to see. And we do want buy-in from the staff, but sometimes, it's going to be different. It's change. And we don't want to go too far down a rabbit hole that, is not going to be, high priority later on. So we want them to feel like they saw it, and we absolutely want to make sure they feel it's right? So we want them to be involved, but we have to be very clear on, what it is that people need to see and what is the most priority for them, because you only have so much time.
Agreed. Yeah, and it's valuable time, and these people that you work with are not, inexpensive either. Okay, so let's move into this. We're going to talk about the contracting and the scope negotiation phase. Those are always fun. It's a process that's often a source of frustration, frankly, and delays. And there's also a bit of just unsureness by the people involved on the client side sometimes because they haven't gone through it before. We've seen it go well, and we'd like to help. We all want to bring things to a mutual yes, usually with both sides being open to the realities of the situation and coming to an agreement on objectives and things like timeline and scope. David, this will be for you to respond to first. What suggestions do you have for prospective clients in how they can make this, contract and scope negotiation phase go well? And where have you seen things go off the rails, where they don't collaborate well? And of course, Jennifer, I'll ask you to respond as well.
Yeah, and I know we've been using the word clarity throughout, much of our time together already today, and I'll use it again or just kind of say again, how important that is. So, we do a few things. One of them is that we, right at the very outset, we have what we call a mutual closing plan. The idea is we've got kind of the steps in the sales process, laid out, and at each step along the way, we talk about, this is, what we're intending to cover or achieve with our time together. Here's the next thing we would do. Here's all the, the people that, traditionally would participate in, each of those steps. And so there's clarity in terms of dates and timing. And so there's not this, wow, I didn't know the sales process was going to take so long, or didn't we miss a step? So we like laying out the actual process itself. So there's clarity there. But, specific to, documents and contracts, we understand that oftentimes, those contracts, may not necessarily be something that the finance and accounting team just has a chance to, put their signature to, and away we go. Instead, they may need to be shared with legal counsel, review done. And so, we want to make certain that we've got an understanding who's going to be reviewing documents, who's going to be approving those documents. Are there even some things that we can do, to not shortcut the process, but at least, get in front of the timing on some of that. So things like the master services agreement, that might be different than the statement of work. And that's, in our case, our master services agreement is more of a traditional legal document. And that's the one in particular that the lawyers are probably going to want to take a look at. Let's get that to them right away, because it's essentially the same document for all of our clients. The statement of work is where we break down the individual, project steps, and, estimate to do the project. But the MSA is universal. Let's get that in front of the attorneys. Let's let them, do any red lines and have those conversations. And that can happen in parallel. So again, we're always trying to be sensitive to timing, trying to understand who the parties are that need to be reviewing and approving, and anything we can do to kind of have, things happening concurrently. We're going to try to do that so we make the most of everyone's time.
Great points. Thank you. It's a very difficult thing. Jennifer, do you want to add something to that?
Yeah, I think it's mainly the timeline. As David said, we too have a universal consulting agreement. It's a difficult thing for customers or prospects because they don't want to give their lawyers like 3 different vendor contracts. But if you feel like you're leaning towards someone, that would be the time to start, because you need to have runway. If you've decided that you need to be implemented by December 31st, and it's going to be a 6-month implementation, and you make your decision, in May, you need time for these contracts to get reviewed, redlined, back and forth. And so I think that's where people don't always give themselves that extra runway for the timing of that. And then their go live can be in jeopardy. So really know from the beginning, we try to tell our customers, if you don't make a decision by this date, but when we say decision, we need contract signed. And so by this date, we're not going to be able to start, because people can, you have to get project teams ready, and they're not going to just be, on the bench. So you need to really have the time to get the contract signed and then assigned to a project team that is in line with your expectation for your go live.
Great points. Great points. It's actually, I'd love to take the excerpt of just that one part that we told clients, hey, this doesn't happen overnight. It takes time to negotiate and end up with the contracts. You're so right. It can delay. Good points from both of you guys, as always. I would say, though, just for people to understand, listening to this, who may not have gone through this before, there's an MSA or a PSA. Both represent essentially kind of like the terms and conditions and some of the responsibilities of the organization you're going to contract with, as well as some of those that relate to the company itself being the client. And then there's scope documentation or project planning documentation as well. That's quite important. And before we go to the next question, I would just say that, first of all, these 2 organizations are not guilty of this, but be curious if you guys could do a quick lessons learned, and only because we're running shorter on time, I think we'll have to keep it shorter, from where scope documents or essentially what we're going to accomplish for the client were either too simplified and what went wrong, or they were so complex that you never got them negotiated and completed. I assume those ring true from past experiences. It seems to happen.
I can take that first.
Thanks, Jen.
I think that when you have a scope document from your vendor, you need to really read through it. The vendor only knows what they've been told, and sometimes you may think, we've had situations where we do a whole scope document and the implementation team goes in and it's like, well, they didn't tell us they had 10 companies, or, that sort of thing. So really read it, make sure there's a clear understanding, make sure that everything that's outlined there is what you expect. If there's something that you were talking about, but it's not in there and it's in a phase 2 or phase 3, make sure your entire team knows that's not in phase 1. Because sometimes they don't put it in phase. The client decides not to put it in phase 1, but it's really a roadblock and you can't move forward, and that's how you get scope creep. Also, make sure that there is a timeline and that your internal team is on board with that. Someone's not taking a sabbatical, an extended vacation, maternity leave during this timeline. That it's all in the document and that you've agreed to your responsibilities too, because it's really a mutual partnership that makes these work.
Great point. David, anything you'd want to add to that? We can move on.
Yeah, and I would just say, it all comes down to, and I think Jennifer did a good job, just making certain that you've got, everything specifically, outlined. The concern, I think, on the part of any client would be, I don't even know what all should be in there. But to Jennifer's point, if things that have been you step through during the demonstration, key, proof cases, aren't, you don't feel like those are fully, represented or outlined, or the effort seems, there's questions around, level of effort that's included in the scope document. Ask the questions, because I would tell you, just kind of the enemy of any project is surprise. The enemy of, and it comes down to just unmet expectations. And so the scope document is meant to be very clear on that, lay that all out and in some respects more detailed than most people would like, but it's meant to be, very detailed. So there's, clarity on deliverables, and especially if it's a fixed fee engagement, you're going to want to
Well
make certain
Great
you
point.
absolutely understand what's in there. But I would say just over the years, hopefully we have less and less of the swing and miss, and we have. You learn with each situation, and I think we've got an internal commitment. We don't want that expectation gap. We don't want that surprise. We communicate weekly with update calls as projects progress. Make certain there's clarity, for all parties involved. How are we progressing? What's been achieved? What's up next? Have we encountered any issues? Anything that's jeopardizing potentially the go live date? And so at each step along the way, these things not only diffuse, any sense of, anxiety, but they also, make it clear for everybody that there's agreement. This is what needs to be done. This is the path forward. Will it impact our go live? Yes or no? And, you don't want to wait till the end of the project to find out that there's been some kind of expectation gap. You want to make certain that there's clarity at each step along the way as you go.
So it's interesting. We've kind of already covered. This is actually very good. You've both done a nice job of talking about the scoping issues. So we've pushed away one of the questions we were going to move to in a minute in the implementation cycle. So that helps from people's timeline on the podcast. But thank you both for that. One of the next pieces I want to cover, though, is around the implementation cycle. So, as we're progressing here, the contracts are signed and negotiated and scopes are understood. And again, in the right world, of course, the prospect is now a client and you now have a relationship that's different than it was in the sales cycle. Let's talk about a couple of success factors here, or at least one that I find to be really important, which is the team that's involved. Clearly, it's up to the two of you to have organizations that are staffed properly for the work to be done. You wouldn't be in the business if you didn't have that. But can you dive a little bit into the value and also the other implications to the project success when your client has a properly prepared and properly skilled team for the project ahead, as opposed to not? It's a big pet peeve of ours, is that people often don't want to listen to hey, we really need to bring in a more skilled person who's done this before, and the client will push back and say, yeah, it's all right, we got it, and no one has time and no one has experience. So help me with that a little bit, and what would you love to see, and how would this sort of thing impact your success with the client and vice versa? Jennifer, you want to go first?
Sure. First of all, just to build on what David was saying about surprise and expectations, remember that we're transferring to our own teams too. And the scope document is what lays that out, right? So I would say the number one reason for success or failure is this internal team that we're working with. They need to have the time and the right people. It doesn't have to be someone even that is the most senior. It needs to just be someone who is organized, a point person, and able to get things done. Someone we can go to for everything, and we'll know where the bones are buried. And I think that it really is a situation where if you don't have that person, they need to be hired, or you need to work with a firm to provide you that oversight so that our team feels comfortable that they're working with a team as well. The implementations, really, truly over the years, in all of my experience, the best implementations are all about people, the people that you're working with, how the communication is, and what the expectations have been.
And people say sometimes that change management seems like nonsense, and I think the reality is people who've been through this. Look, we've all been to this before, but I've seen you guys in action with your teams. I mean, it is about people and how you manage expectations. So thank you.
It doesn't matter which software that you're. The software isn't going to do it for you. It's the people.
Yep, exactly. David, you want to add to that about dealing with the properly prepared team and also what can happen, both good and bad?
Yeah, no, I think Jennifer did a great job of kind of outlining what some of the critical success factors are there. I think one of the things we've learned too that I would just call out is we want to make certain that all of the kind of the key stakeholders are involved from the very outset, because what you don't want to find is that you're in a situation where you've got somebody that now the decision's been made, we're moving forward with X product, and you get ready to start doing implementation and training, and you've got key players in the mix, in the room, arms crossed, no one asked me, I'm not on board, this isn't the way we do things. And to Jennifer's point, it's the people that make the project successful. I've seen amazing products crash and burn because the implementation process, yes, maybe had some challenges, but equally is disastrous as if the folks that really we need to have them fully subscribed and working to make this a success. I've always said that the right client team members can make even a marginal project and a marginal product successful, whereas the inverse of that is maybe not necessarily true. So you really want to make certain that you've got buy-in, participation, key stakeholders, and they become the internal leaders within the organization, and they know who the potential project terrorists are. And they're hopefully going to keep everything from winding up in the ditch, because they say no, this is what we're doing, this is how we're doing it. We all talked about it, and so they're going to kind of take the steps internally to make certain that the other team members are moving along. So you think about it too. You don't want to go at the speed of necessarily the person, the slowest learner. You want to, you need to be able to move the project along. So we always think, train the trainers type of approach, and make certain that they understand, and like I said, bought in, supportive, and they're going to help bring the rest of their own internal team along as the project moves forward as well.
Great points, both of you. Thank you. The concept also of the why we're doing this project, and the communications that you both have talked about is really important. I think we've seen sometimes people forget the reason, and to the point where they put something up in the break room when people went into the office and had something up there saying, this is the project we're doing, this is why we're doing it, let's all be on board. So a lot of it comes from executive buy-in and leadership. But anyway, you guys have been through this. This has really been helpful. I think we're going to end today with one last question for Jennifer and David, which is that these projects do go askew every so often. Even the two of you, who, as good as you are, you've had challenges with your teams through client experiences, regardless of fault, right? It's not the point. Help me a little bit with explaining to our listeners about situations that you've had where you've had to intercede and resolve a challenging project matter. I'm going to open it up to whatever good example you want to use, because it could be for whatever reason, whatever outcomes. But what happens when it gets to your desk? What are you thinking about? What do you take care of?
Jennifer, you want to do that one first?
Sure. I think David.
She'll say, I've never had that happen.
Never. I think David was right, though, with the stakeholder. If you have someone at a senior level who's willing to stand up and not only support you when you're doing well, but also call me and say when things aren't going well up front, before it becomes something where the whole team is just, the software's terrible, or the team is, it becomes a blame game. It really has been the most successful, because the stakeholder and I can then sort of sort it out, see if there's things that we haven't done right, to see if there's things that their team could do differently, and try to recalibrate and get us back on the right path. If you don't have a stakeholder that is willing to do that, and they sort of passively let their team take it, it's I've never understood that. They're spending so much money. Why would you want to do that? Why wouldn't you want to try to fix this, make everybody work together and find a better way, versus sort of blame the software, blame the vendor. So we've had things where we have change of management. There's a lot of movement going on recently in organizations. The person you worked with in the beginning isn't the person that you're working with now. The expectations are different. The new person came in and they didn't like that decision. They want a new decision. They want to bring their decision in. And so it's really all about communication. And for us, the sooner, don't feel bad. Don't feel bad. You're not going to hurt the consultant's feelings. I know, you're not going to get them fired. Like, get up, get in front of it. I see things aren't going the way that maybe my team or I expected. What's going on? And let us either explain and say, this is why, or, go back to our team and say, hey, what's going on? But it really, it's never too soon. And most organizations that do things right, they want to know. They want to know. They want to know up front. So I would say,
So true.
In these situations, that's what I would do. I'd make the call and try to get in front of it before it becomes something. And it's very hard to recover from when your team feels something is failing. And so I just really urge people to not let it go on too long.
Before it becomes worse, right? Thank you, Jennifer. That was good. I kind of would have expected that answer because that's how you work. Communication is so important. David, do you want to add something?
Yeah, you talk about, potential, war stories or areas of concern, or when things ever do go off the rails. I think the one that's probably the most alarming, and we've seen it happen a handful of times, but it really speaks to, like I said, kind of the overall process. You may very well find yourself, well into the project, and then all of a sudden you find yourself on a call where there's a bunch of new requirements that are being, introduced, into the conversation, into the solution. And, collectively, internally, we may be looking at each other going, who is this person and why have we never heard any of this before? Because they failed to participate. They may have very well, told, the finance and accounting team, you guys do the process, you own the process, it's your call, it's your decision. And then at some late stage in the game, all of a sudden they get involved because they've got an idea, as a business leader. Here's the things I would really like the solution to do. It's like, whoa, we are well past, first of all, that's not in the statement of work. Second of all, not even sure the product will even do what it is you're kind of highlighting, and those are the ones that are truly the most alarming. But it's happened. It happens on occasion, but that's why it's incumbent upon the VAR, the reseller, to ask, who are the decision makers? Are they involved? Is there any kind of even executive kind of presentation that needs to be made, such that there is buy-in at the very top, such that, there isn't, that we eliminate or reduce the risk of that, that kind of thing happening, downstream. Doesn't happen often, but when it does, it's, it potentially, you might have gone about the process differently, or maybe even, kind of come at, the overall project with, different components if some of the stuff had been clear early on. So again, it just keeps coming back to make certain that you've got all the right people involved, that there's good communication, and that, that you really just do everything you can to minimize the situation where there might be a surprise, and because that just is just so painful for everyone.
Yeah, that means the advice that you both were giving so eloquently in the first 30 minutes of this podcast are what caused the problems that they're not adhered to or listened to, right? So good advice all around. At least we're all consistent. You guys have shared such good insights. I'm going to probably cut it here only because we're reaching about that time. I appreciate that each of these topics could probably, be turned into a lesson plan of an hour or two each at a minimum. So thank you both for being so generous with your time today and open about these things. Nothing's perfect. This is hard work for both client and for the provider. And so grateful that the two of you guys are both close to us and also taking care of clients out there in a good way. Any closing comments before I have a sign off?
Bob, I would just say, as always, it's a privilege working with you. You're a consummate professional. You always focus on the important, and you help us look good. So thank you for all that you do every day as well.
Oh, thanks, David. Appreciate that.
I concur. All right. Thank you, Bob, for having me participate in this. And yes, having people like you out there that are telling the truth and helping to guide clients is helpful to all of us. We all do better when we all do better. So, right, it's one of those things that if people have successful implementations, they want to do more. And if, they have a failed one, even by somebody else, it doesn't do well for the whole industry. So we appreciate the work you're doing out there. And thank you for being my friend and doing business with us all these years.
Likewise, I think all of us are grateful, frankly. And it's interesting. I look at this and I think that what people don't always remember, and I think I'd throw this to any listener, is that people like David and Jennifer and their teams, they will go to the mat for you if you are open, transparent, communicative, and trying to just get through the challenge together as partners. I think that's a fair assumption, and I think that the more of the partnering you do with these people, the better. And let's not look at them any other way than as partners, because they're the ones who take you down the path and also are there for you along the way. So really, thank you both. So again, repeat your names for the listeners so they have it, because we're just listening here. David Cieslak with RKLE Solutions, thank you. And Jennifer Harris with Technology Management Concepts, thank you. And this is Bob Green with Singularly Whack Business Informatics signing off and saying have a good day, and thank you for listening today.
Thank you for joining us on today's episode of the Balancing Act podcast by Singularly Whack. You can tune in every Thursday morning to gain a sense of balance in the fast-paced industry of business. You can listen on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, and our website. We'll see you next time.